School fires elderly janitor. Next day, billionaire arrives and dismisses the entire staff. You're too old for this place, Tom. You don't fit the new vision. The words landed like a slap, sharp and final. Thomas Tom Jenkins stood in Principal Gregory Dalton's office, staring at the man he had once helped through 3 school renovations and 2 floods. He had just finished polishing the last hallway before the bell rang, unaware it would be his last time. For 32 years, Tom had served Ridgecrest High School, a place that had never really seen him, yet had quietly depended on him. Every squeaky locker fixed every hallway floor that glistened at sunrise. Every kid who forgot lunch and left with a full belly, all of it had his fingerprint. But none of it mattered today. There was no ceremony, no cake, not even a printed thank you. Just a cardboard box waiting by the door with his name misspelled in black marker. Gregory Dalton didn't look up as he signed the termination letter. They say we need a fresher look, cleaner image. Our sponsors want youth diversity. He paused, glancing at the gray curls beneath Tom's janitor cap and energy. Tom didn't speak. Not yet. He knew words wouldn't matter. The principal wasn't talking to the man who saved the gym from flooding last spring. He was talking to a number on a payroll sheet, and that number apparently was too expensive to justify. So Tom picked up the box, his hand steady despite the storm rising in his chest, and walked out of the office like he'd done 1,000 times before, except this time nobody would be waiting on the other side. Outside, the morning air was crisp. Students were just arriving, headphones and coffees in hand, never noticing the man walking away with his life in a box. But someone did notice. Jaden Brooks, a junior with a trail of detention slips and an attitude problem to match, watched from the stairwell. Tom had once taught him how to fix a busted locker, even slipped him a screwdriver and said, "It's not about fixing things. It's about knowing you can." Jaden never forgot that. Across the courtyard, Emily Saunders, a senior in the top 1% academically, and daughter of one of the school board members, saw it too. She recognized the silence that followed Mr. Jenkins like a shadow. It was the kind of silence that comes after a funeral, except no one had died. Just dignity. Neither of them said anything. Not yet. By lunchtime, the rumors spread like wildfire. He just disappeared. Budget cuts. He was stealing stuff, maybe. Nah, too old to do the job. Whispers. None of them from people who'd ever spoken to Tom. None of them who knew that he was the one who stayed late to clean up after proms to cover for staff, who didn't show up to quietly fund 3 students' field trips when their parents couldn't. Inside the break room, Dalton was laughing with Coach Freeman about cleaning house. On his desk sat a sleek folder marked New Staffing Strategy, Ridgecrest 2.0. Tom's name wasn't in it. Neither was his legacy. That night, Ridgecrest's social media posted a generic, exciting change ahead banner. No mention of Tom. No photo. Just a sanitized future. But change wasn't finished. 2 blocks away, in a tiny apartment lit by a flickering lamp, Tom placed the box on the kitchen table and removed its contents with reverent care. A broken name tag. A photograph of him with the first graduating class he ever saw off. A worn note from a student now crumpled that read, "Thanks for fixing more than just my locker." He held it in his hands like it was a lifeline. And then he reached for something no one had seen. In years, a letter folded and yellowed from a young boy named Gabriel, who once slept in his cleaning closet for a week before being sent into the foster system. "You didn't just save me," the boy had written, "you made me believe I mattered. Someday I'll come back for you." Tom smiled. Just a little. Because he remembered the boy. He remembered the fire in his eyes. And what Tom didn't know, what Ridgecrest High was about to learn, was that Gabriel had kept his promise, in ways no one saw coming. The next morning, the wind changed. Literally. Who gets rid of the heart and expects the body to keep beating? Emily's words slipped out before she realized she'd spoken aloud. She and Jaden stood beside the empty janitor's closet during third period, the silence louder than any bell. The floor still smelled faintly of citrus cleaner. The light buzzed overhead, flickering. It had always flickered, but Mr. Jenkins never let it burn out. Jaden shoved his hands in his hoodie pocket, eyes darting down the hallway. They think nobody's gonna care. That's the whole plan. People like him, they don't get farewell parties. They just vanish. He kicked at a loose tile near the baseboard. Tom had repaired that tile 3 times. He never asked for anything. Emily leaned against the wall, clutching a copy of the school newspaper on the front page, a color photo of Principal Dalton shaking hands with a shiny new sponsor under the bold headline, Ridgecrest Partners with Tech Giant to Modernize Facilities. There was no mention of Tom Jenkins, not even a footnote. They're calling it a rebranding, she said, voice tinged with disgust. Dalton says he wants a new energy reflective of the future. Like loyalty, service, integrity, none of that counts anymore. Jaden's jaw tightened. Unless you can code or wear a polo shirt with their logo. In the classrooms around them, lectures continued like clockwork. No one missed a janitor, but Tom wasn't just a janitor, and they knew it. He was the reason Jaden stayed in school after his first suspension, the one who had shown him how to rebuild a rusted bike chain after his got stolen. And for Emily, he was the first adult who'd asked her if she actually liked studying political science, or if it was just what her mother expected. The injustice felt like a splinter under the skin, too small to be seen, but impossible to ignore. The deeper you pressed, the more it burned. That afternoon, Jaden stood up in third period history and asked point blank, why was Mr. Jenkins fired? The teacher froze. That's not something we're discussing in class. Why not Jaden pressed? We learn about labor laws, civil rights workers' movements. Doesn't this count? Snickers echoed. Someone muttered, sit down, activist. But Emily didn't laugh. She scribbled something in her notebook, eyes fierce. At lunch, Jaden handed out flyers with Tom's face and the words, loyalty deserves justice. Most students ignored him. Some crumpled the paper. One student took a selfie holding the flyer and hashtagged it #BoomerBye. Emily tried to speak to Ms. Reynolds, the English teacher everyone liked. Don't get involved, she whispered nervously. You'll only make things worse. When Emily asked for clarification, Ms. Reynolds glanced at the cameras in the hallway. There are eyes everywhere now. This isn't just about Tom. Something shifted in Emily then. She realized this wasn't an isolated cruelty. It was part of a quiet machine, a system that devours good people under the guise of progress. That night, she and Jaden sat side by side in the public library, combing through Ridgecrest's funding records. It didn't take long to find it. A $2.7 million donation from a tech developer tied to the school board's newest member. A clause in the contract labeled Operations Optimization, which included non-teaching staff reassessment. They had made a deal. Tom's job had been traded for a coffee bar in the lobby and new logo designs for the school uniforms. Jaden slammed his hand on the desk. They planned this. Emily stared at the screen. They erased him. A slow realization crept between them. Tom hadn't been let go because he failed. He was removed because his presence, quiet, humble, unwavering, made the rest of them look in the mirror and ask why they'd stopped caring. And that kind of reflection was dangerous to a system built on appearances. Jaden stood pulling out his phone. Then we make them look again. The next morning a video was posted to social media. It showed old footage, grainy but powerful, of Mr. Jenkins leading a safety drill during a fire evacuation, fixing a broken heater during a snowstorm, hugging a sobbing freshman in the hallway. Over it, Jaden's voice. You call this obsolete? The video started spreading. Quietly at first, then rapidly. Students whispered. Teachers grew stiff. And Principal Dalton. He panicked because he knew exactly who had seen the video. The man in the penthouse. The name hidden in the school's old donor files. The same boy Tom Jenkins once protected from the world. And that man had already made a call. There's a helicopter on the football field. The announcement came from a freshman who ran breathless into the cafeteria, his tray clattering to the floor. For a moment, nobody moved. Then, like a ripple across still water, the entire student body surged toward the windows, pressing their faces against the glass in disbelief. Outside, the sky cracked open with the roar of blades. A sleek black helicopter, nothing like the local news choppers, was descending directly onto Ridgecrest High's field. Principal Dalton froze in mid-step as he exited his office, the sound shaking the hallway tiles. His phone buzzed in his hand. A number with no name. He didn't answer. Jaden and Emily pushed their way through the crowd. They stood on the front steps, eyes locked on the machine as it touched down with surgical precision. The pilot cut the engines. Dust swirled around them. The silence that followed was heavier than the noise. And then the door opened. A tall man stepped out, his charcoal suit, uncreased shoes glinting. He didn't carry an entourage, didn't look around for applause. He simply adjusted his gold cufflinks and walked forward with the unshakable calm of someone used to being the most powerful man in the room. Emily's voice dropped. "That's Gabriel Knox." Jaden frowned. "Who? He's on the cover of Forbes. Built the biggest infrastructure investment firm on the West Coast. Billionaire. Private reformatory schools. Orphan advocacy programs. No one shows up here for that guy." But Gabriel Knox wasn't here to be seen. He was here to see someone. He strode toward Dalton, who plastered on a diplomatic smile. "Mr. Knox, what an unexpected surprise. If this is about the donation package, we're very excited to." "Where is he?" Gabriel's voice was calm. Cold. Dalton blinked. "I'm sorry, who? Thomas Jenkins." The name hit the crowd like lightning. Dalton hesitated. "Mr. Jenkins is no longer employed here. We've made some restructuring choices, I know," that Gabriel snapped. "I'm asking where he is now." Before Dalton could stammer out a response, a soft voice rose from the crowd. "Maple Street. 1427. It was a freshman, nervous but determined. He lives on Maple Street. I saw him leave with a box." Gabriel turned, looked at the boy, nodded once. "Thank you." He turned to walk back toward the helicopter. Dalton reached out, desperation creeping into his voice. "Mr. Knox, please, if you're upset about something, we can discuss it. We're done discussing." Gabriel's eyes were sharp. "You fired a man who built this school from the inside out. You traded soul for surface, and now you think you can buy it back?" Dalton's smile cracked. He glanced at the helicopter, at the students watching in stunned silence. "This isn't how we handle things here." "Exactly," Gabriel said. "That's why I'm here." Jaden took a step forward. "Take us with you." Gabriel turned, his brow raised. "And who are you people who actually saw him? Who remember him?" For a second, no one moved. Then Emily added, "If this is about him, then we deserve to know the truth." Gabriel studied them. No judgment, just calculation. Then he nodded once. "Fine. You've got 5 seconds." They bolted. The door of the helicopter closed with a hiss, the engine already humming. Jaden gripped the armrest, heart pounding. Emily stared straight ahead. No one spoke. As they lifted off, Ridgecrest shrank beneath them, its polished courtyards, its banners fluttering its hollow pride. Inside the cabin, Gabriel finally spoke. "I was 13 when I met him. Sleeping in a janitor closet. They were going to send me back to the system. Said I was too angry, too far gone. But Jenkins, he saw me, gave me keys to the workshop, said, 'Fix something broken, it'll teach you how to fix yourself.'" Emily blinked hard. Jaden swallowed. "That man didn't just keep this place running," Gabriel continued, voice quieter now. He gave it a conscience. Outside the window, the city blurred into streets and rooftops. Then a small home appeared, faded blue paint, a sagging porch. Gabriel leaned forward. "There he is." Mr. Jenkins sat alone on the steps, staring at the ground, like he was still waiting for something to make sense. Gabriel stood, opened the cabin door mid-landing, and stepped out without hesitation. The blades whipped his coat like a flag. Emily and Jaden followed. Tom looked up, squinting into the wind. And then his eyes widened. "No," he whispered. But yes, Gabriel had returned. And this time he wasn't a lost boy. He was a man bringing justice. "You kept your promise." The words trembled out of Tom Jenkins' mouth before he could stop them. His voice cracked not from age but from disbelief. He stood frozen on his porch, the wind from the helicopter flattening his shirt to his chest. He looked smaller than he used to, not physically but spiritually worn down by years of silent battles and unseen worth. Yet in that moment with Gabriel Knox standing in front of him, that worn-down man looked remembered. Gabriel didn't smile. Not yet. He pulled a folded document from his coat pocket and extended it. "Pack your bags, Tom. You're coming with me." Tom didn't reach for the paper. His hand hovered. His eyes flicked between Gabriel and the two teenagers standing behind him, Jaden tense and watchful, Emily curious and respectful. The wind carried the scent of city dust and memory. "I don't understand," Tom said slowly. "Why now?" After all this time, Gabriel's voice dropped. "Because you didn't turn your back on me when you had every reason to. I wasn't just a janitor's problem, I was a liability. But you gave me a key, not a punishment. And that changed everything." Tom looked down at his hands. Calloused, tired, stronger than most would ever know. "You don't owe me anything," he murmured. "That's where you're wrong," Gabriel said. "You're the only reason I'm standing here. The only reason I didn't get buried by the system. So now I'm giving you a choice: walk back into a world that threw you out, or walk toward one we build together." Jaden stepped forward. "Mr. Jenkins, we saw what they did, what they tried to erase. But we're not letting them." Tom's eyes brimmed. "I'm just a janitor." Gabriel shook his head. "No, you're a builder. Of people. Of values. And I need that more than I need any boardroom strategist or Ivy League suit." He held out the contract again. Tom's hands trembled as he took it, scanned the header. A full executive role in a new educational project. Salaried. Permanent. With authority to hire, design, and lead. His voice caught. "You want me to help run a school, not run it," Gabriel corrected. "Shape it." The paper felt heavier than it should have, not in weight, but in meaning. Tom looked at the fine print, the embossed seal, the blank signature line, and realized this was not a gift. It was a reckoning, a chance to give meaning to a life spent in the margins. Emily stepped closer, her voice soft but steady. "You always believed in us. Let us believe in you now." And then it happened, something rare. Tom Jenkins smiled. It wasn't wide or perfect, but it was real. He folded the paper gently and slipped it into his shirt pocket. "I'll need to grab my tools," he said. As they walked toward the helicopter, none of them noticed the car parked at the end of the street. Inside, Principal Gregory Dalton sat gripping the steering wheel, his knuckles white. He had followed them, had watched it all. And what he saw now made his chest tighten, not with regret, but with rage. Because in the span of 20 minutes, the man he'd deemed non-essential was rising higher than any promotion Dalton had ever earned. And that burned. Tom climbed into the helicopter slowly, like someone crossing into another lifetime. Jaden helped him with the step. Emily secured the latch. Gabriel sat across from them, already typing into his phone. His voice was calm. "We've got a site ready. Architects waiting. Team on standby. All we need is the soul." Tom didn't reply. He sat back, gazing out the window at the neighborhood that had boxed him in for decades. The same cracked sidewalks, the same flickering street lamp. But this time he wasn't just leaving, he was rising. The helicopter lifted. Below them, Dalton stepped out of his car, hair tousled by the wind. He yelled something, but it was lost to the roar of rotors. He waved his arms like he still had control, like his title still meant something. Inside, Tom sat with his eyes closed. The vibration of the aircraft pulsed through his bones, but it no longer shook him. Not the way humiliation did. Not the way abandonment did. Emily leaned close. "How does it feel?" Tom opened his eyes. "Like I've been waiting for this moment my whole life." Gabriel looked up from his phone and locked eyes with him. "Then let's make it count." And somewhere inside that silent promise, a new future was already being written. "You don't get to walk away like this." Jenkins. The voice cut through the roar of helicopter blades like a whip. Tom paused mid-step at the open door of the chopper, his foot hovering over a future he'd never imagined. He turned slowly, and there he was, Principal Gregory Dalton, storming across the cracked pavement of Maple Street like a man who still believed power could follow him wherever he went. Dalton's suit was rumpled, tie loosened, and for the first time his words didn't land with authority. They fell flat, desperate. "You have responsibilities. You can't just—" Gabriel stepped between them, his voice calm, but sharp as a blade. "Responsibilities. You mean scrubbing toilets for a system that dumped him the minute it needed a PR facelift?" Dalton's face twisted. That was a miscommunication. "A bureaucratic no," Jaden said, suddenly voice firm. It was humiliation. And we all saw it. Emily stepped forward too. "You erased him. Pretended he didn't matter. Now you're just upset everyone noticed." Dalton turned on her, flustered. "You don't understand how schools work. We have donors, optics, metrics." Gabriel's laugh was cold. "You had a man who built trust without needing a paycheck to care. That's the rarest resource of all, and you threw it away." Tom hadn't said a word. He simply stood watching the man who once wielded authority like a badge now crumble under his own facade. The balance had shifted, but it didn't feel like revenge. It felt like truth reclaiming its ground. Dalton took a shaky breath. "If this is about money, Jenkins, we can talk. I can get you a severance package. It was never about money," Tom finally said. His voice was steady, deeper than it had been in years. It was about dignity. He stepped closer, not with aggression, but with certainty. "For decades I watched this place polish trophies and hang banners while ignoring the cracks in its own foundation. I covered those cracks with a mop and a smile because I thought the kids deserved better than what the system gave them." Dalton's shoulders sagged. "I didn't mean you meant exactly what you did," Tom said. "And that's the difference." Gabriel placed a hand on Tom's shoulder. "We're done here." But just before Tom turned, he looked Dalton in the eyes. "You didn't break me. You just reminded me what I'm worth." Then he stepped inside the helicopter, and for the first time in a long time, left something behind, with peace instead of pain. As the aircraft lifted, Dalton stood motionless on the street, watching the man he'd dismissed rise above him literally and figuratively. The students he once thought forgettable now stood aligned with someone who had power that couldn't be bought, legacy. Inside, Gabriel turned to Tom. "This project we're building, it needs more than walls and windows. It needs a compass. Someone who's lived the system and knows where it failed." Tom stared out the window, the streets shrinking beneath them. "You're not just building a school, are you?" "No," Gabriel replied. "We're building a new way." Jaden looked between them. "What's it gonna look like?" Gabriel's eyes glinted. "Like a place where no one gets discarded for being inconvenient. Where kindness is policy, not a footnote." Tom didn't answer right away. He let the words sit inside him, reshaping something that had been cracked but not broken. He reached into his shirt pocket and pulled out an old photo one from years ago, him and a young boy with wild hair and bruised eyes smiling beside a rusted tool cart. He handed it to Gabriel. I kept it, Tom said. Every school year, every time they cut hours or whispered that I was replaceable, I kept this. Gabriel looked at the photo, lips tightening. So did I. Jaden leaned in, reading the handwritten words on the back. Fix something broken. Start with yourself. Tom's hands rested on his knees. His voice was soft. Let's fix what's still broken. Outside, the clouds began to part, and ahead the future waited like a blank canvas with no ceiling. You're going to design the future with the hands that once cleaned up everyone else's mess. Gabriel's voice echoed through the glass-walled conference room where city lights twinkled behind him like stars reborn. Across the table, Tom Jenkins sat in a tailored jacket that still felt too new, holding a pen that cost more than his first car. It didn't feel real, not yet. Around them were architects, planners, and advisors, all eyes on Tom, but not with condescension, with expectation, respect, even awe. Gabriel stood beside a massive blueprint. This school isn't just about modern tech and green buildings. It's about flipping the script. We're not hiring administrators who sit in ivory towers. We're hiring people who lived what the system ignored. Tom glanced down at the schematic. It was beautiful open-air classrooms, mental wellness gardens, trauma-informed design. But it was missing something. It's clean, he said quietly. But it still feels top-down. Jaden, seated beside him, nodded. You mean it looks perfect, but it doesn't sound like it was built by people who've ever been kicked out of a class or had to work 3 jobs to stay in one. Gabriel smiled. That's why you're both here. Tom leaned forward, pointing to a corner near the cafeteria on the layout. Put a repair station there, with actual tools. Let students fix things. Bikes, broken chairs, their own lockers, not just to save money, to remind them they're not helpless. Emily chimed in, flipping through the student policy draft. And remove zero tolerance from the code. Jenkins taught us that discipline without understanding just pushes people further away. The room quieted. The lead architect jotted notes rapidly. For the first time, Tom wasn't being heard as a token voice of diversity or pity. He was being treated as an architect of culture. His lived experience had become policy, his failures curriculum, his scars the building blocks of a better blueprint. Later, Gabriel pulled Tom aside onto the balcony. The air was crisp, city buzzing below. You know there are people asking why you. Why not someone with credentials, degrees, a leadership background? Tom didn't flinch. Because I spent 32 years cleaning the consequences of those degrees. Gabriel nodded slowly. And that's exactly why they're afraid of you now. They both looked down at the distant streets where somewhere kids still slipped through cracks no one wanted to fix. Back at Ridgecrest, Principal Dalton sat in his dimmed office, face pale as he scrolled through his inbox. News of Gabriel's school had leaked. Local news, national blogs, former students, it was spreading like fire. The janitor who rose. A new education movement led by a forgotten hero. One email subject line made Dalton's stomach churn. Board requests emergency meeting. Confidence vote. Meanwhile, Tom walked through the construction site of the new school, still just steel beams and skeletal framing, but full of soul already. He picked up a hard hat labeled Project Lead T. Jenkins. For a second, his hand trembled again, but he put it on. Gabriel joined him holding a small plaque. We'll place this at the entrance. Tom read it aloud. The place where everyone matters, especially those the world forgets. He stared at the metal plate, then at the building rising before him. I never thought I'd be part of something like this. Gabriel's voice was low. You always were. The world just finally caught up. Tom exhaled the weight of invisibility lifting from his shoulders piece by piece. Not because someone gave him power, but because someone remembered his worth and let it take root. Behind him, the sound of drills and hammers continued the anthem of a better world, being built one beam, one broken belief, one brave decision at a time. You're on the front page of the Times, Mr. Jenkins. Emily burst into the project trailer, holding up a newspaper with trembling hands. Her voice was caught somewhere between awe and joy. The headline read, "From Janitor to Justice." The man behind America's first equity-led school. And there in full color was Tom Jenkins' hard hat on eyes, steady standing in front of the rising framework of a new dream. Tom took the paper with both hands. His face didn't light up with pride. It sank into something deeper. Reflection. Regret. A memory of all the nights he'd walked home in silence unseen. All the birthdays spent alone. All the times he'd handed a student $1 for lunch and returned to a storage closet with no thank you. Now the world knew his name. But he still remembered the years when it didn't. Jaden leaned over his shoulder. You've become a symbol, man. Hope with calluses. Tom chuckled lightly. Hope with sore knees. But just as the mood lifted, Gabriel Knox entered with his phone in hand, face stone cold. We've got a problem. Tom stood. What is it? Gabriel turned the screen. It showed an emergency school board press release, Ridgecrest High to undergo immediate audit and leadership review. They're not going down quietly, Gabriel said. Dalton's throwing accusations, saying we're undermining public education, that your promotion is a publicity stunt. Tom folded the paper, eyes sharpening. So we tell the truth louder. No, Gabriel said we show it louder. Later that week, they opened the site to the public for a community preview. Families walked through scaffolding and steel beams guided by renderings and passion. Tom stood at the front explaining how each space was designed to heal, not just teach. This won't be a place where kids are labeled. This will be a place where they're understood. A woman in the crowd raised her hand. And what about people like you? Custodians, aides, cafeteria workers, will they be disposable here too? Tom's voice didn't waver. They'll be pillars. Every hand that keeps this place standing will be honored like a teacher, because they are teachers in how to work, how to endure, how to serve with quiet grace. The applause was slow at first. Then it swelled. But back in his office, Principal Dalton watched the broadcast with clenched fists. He picked up the phone. We're suing for defamation, he told his lawyer. And I want every contact traced. Someone leaked our internal files. The lawyer hesitated. Greg, the board's already looking to replace you. Dalton's face fell. Meanwhile, Gabriel, Tom, Emily, and Jaden returned to the construction trailer. They were quiet, watching the sun set through beams of a school that was becoming more than architecture, it was becoming legacy. Gabriel finally spoke. There's something I haven't told you. Everyone turned. I've been offered a federal grant, massive scale, national rollout of this model, but they want proof it works first. A pilot, a principal. He turned to Tom. I want it to be you. Tom stepped back. Me, I've never run anything more than a mop bucket. Gabriel shook his head. You've run hearts, Tom. You've managed fear, lifted dignity, and shaped lives. That's more leadership than any degree can teach. Emily placed a hand on Tom's arm. You already taught us without a classroom. Now imagine what you'll do with one. Jaden nodded. The system needs to see that people like you belong at the head of the table. Tom looked around the room at blueprints pinned to corkboards, at dreams still wet in concrete. Then he said something none of them expected. Then let's make the table bigger. And just like that, the janitor who was once discarded stepped into the heart of the revolution he helped inspire. But not everyone was ready to let go of the old world, and shadows were already forming behind the scenes. He'll fail. He doesn't have the pedigree. The words came from a closed-door donor meeting leaked anonymously to the press. A former board member at Ridgecrest High speaking coldly arrogantly about Tom Jenkins. It aired 2 days before the official ribbon-cutting ceremony of the new school, intended to humiliate, to sow doubt, to remind the public that in the eyes of the old guard, a janitor could never become a leader. But this time the backlash didn't go their way. The video went viral not because people agreed, but because they were done pretending credentials were character. Parents, students, educators, even celebrities took to social media. Jenkins' effect trended for days. Dozens posted photos of the invisible heroes in their own schools, janitors, aides, crossing guards, and one by one they started saying their names. Tom didn't respond publicly. Instead, he walked through the nearly finished halls of the school, bearing no formal name, just a working title on the blueprint's Project Second Light. Named by Jaden. Meant to symbolize not just a second chance, but a second source of illumination, one that comes from within. As he walked past the empty classrooms and fresh drywall, Tom placed his hand on one of the support beams, where the construction team had let staff leave personal messages before sealing the wall. In faded ink, his own words stood quietly. Every day you show up matters even when no one sees it. Emily found him there. You okay? Tom nodded. I was invisible for so long it's strange being seen. She smiled gently. You were never invisible. The system just didn't want to admit you mattered. The next morning the ceremony arrived. News vans, students, families, politicians. Even Dalton was there watching from the sidelines with a face unreadable. Gabriel gave the opening remarks. Today is not about architecture or headlines. It's about returning power to those who've lived without it and daring to believe their wisdom can shape something better. Then he handed the mic to Tom. Tom stood there for a long moment, eyes scanning the crowd. I spent 30 years sweeping floors, changing light bulbs, and wiping up things no one wanted to look at. But I also spent those years listening, watching, learning what schools really need, and it's not more test prep or marble lobbies. He paused, voice steady. It's dignity. For every child who gets labeled before they're understood. For every worker whose name is forgotten the moment they clock out. This school exists to prove that everyone has something to teach. The applause was thunderous, but before the final ribbon was cut, something happened that no one expected. Jaden walked up with a piece of paper in hand, a last-minute addition. We think it's time the school had a name, he said. A real one, and we all voted. He handed it to Tom. Tom unfolded it slowly. At the top, in bold black letters, Jenkins Academy for Dignity and Change. Tom blinked fast, trying to hold it in, but he couldn't. Not this time. Tears rolled down his face as Gabriel placed a hand on his back. I didn't build this, Tom whispered. You lived it, Gabriel replied. That's more than enough. The crowd cheered. Students surrounded him. Former Ridgecrest teachers who had once looked away now looked at him with reverence. For a moment time stood still, and in that silence, something sacred was born. Tom turned back to the crowd, holding the sign high. You don't need permission to matter, he said. You just need a moment when someone finally sees you. As the ribbon was cut and the doors opened to a new generation, Tom stood at the entrance, no longer a janitor, no longer overlooked. He was the foundation now, the proof that even those society calls small can carry the weight of something revolutionary. And far in the distance the old walls of Ridgecrest trembled, not from demolition, but from a legacy that refused to stay silent.